Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel for another installment in our Retrospective Figure Showcase series, where we take a look at a figure that I'm either unboxing for the first time that maybe I've had in storage, or something that I've had in the collection that I want to take a closer look at. Now this is actually going to be a slightly different video, and I'll get into that shortly, but we're going to be taking a look at John Rambo by Threezero from Rambo 3. And before getting into anything about the license or the figure, I have to give a special shout out to my friend Fabs over at Fabs Figures. You can find the link to his channel in the description of the video. I just have to say thank you to him for sending this over. And just a quick story, there was something that he didn't have in his collection that I had that I honestly was never going to use. So I ended up sending it to him. And when we were talking, he remembered that I had mentioned that I was looking for this figure, this Rambo. And he had it, and he ended up just sending it to me. He absolutely didn't have to do that, but I really appreciate that he did, and I just can't say enough how grateful I am. So, Fabs, thanks for sending this over, my friend. Now, getting into the figure, I honestly don't know why I passed on this guy. He really fits well into my collecting habits. I think part of me still thought Threezero was a little iffy, especially after their X-Files figures, and I thought I would be able to get this version down the road, but I waited way too long and he sold out everywhere, and he's actually climbing up in the secondary market. So I haven't seen many great deals for him. Now, I already reviewed the First Blood figure, which was incredible, and I ordered the Rambo II version, but I honestly, again, thought I missed out on this. But here he is in hand, and I am extremely happy to have him. So, Rambo 3. I grew up watching these movies. Again, different times, right? Not sure that would be acceptable today, but back then it wasn't a big issue. Now, I loved all of them. Second one, I think, is still my favorite. Rambo 3 was entertaining and had a few things that always stuck with me. The biggest one being that moment where after Rambo gets injured in the tunnels underneath the Soviet base, he ends up putting gunpowder on his wound and essentially burns through the abdomen to cauterize and clean. And honestly, that has to be one of the highlight action scenes right in the movie as well, that Rambo escape scene after he's failed to rescue Troutman. Now, story goes for that Sly said it's something that this gunpowder thing is something that special forces operators would do, but that's kind of one of those big questionable stories, right? But look, I thought at the time that this was very much a continuation of the Cold War series of movies we were getting, and it was a change in setting for Rambo, right? The movie was, to me, nowhere as good as the original, but it's still a product of the 80s and highly enjoyable, although Rambo does seem a little more talkative than in previous or even future installments here. Alright, so let's take a look at what Threezero provided here as a package. And I'm actually really happy to see that, like with the First Blood version, we did get a nice overall package for him. So first of all, weapons, you get a nice variety. You get the grenade launcher with the RPG itself that he uses during the escape scene, as well as an AK with grenade launcher, and his Rambo 3 bow with a slew of arrows. And then you get the hands, you get some explosives, and some additional pieces of clothing to recreate certain scenes. So overall, really nice looking package, and immediately stands out as a different set from the First Blood one. So let's jump to take a closer look at the accessories, and we'll start with the hands. And I will say, they're really good. They match the skin tone of the figure and have some solid paint apps and detail work, and they are meant to hold all of the different accessories and weapons. I will say though that I do think they are still a little oversized. It's the similar reaction I had with the First Blood version. They're not terribly oversized, but I think that, especially with the fists, it becomes a little more noticeable on the figure itself. Now, let's get into the weapons, and we'll start with the AK with the underslung grenade launcher. So first of all, it's pretty accurate to the movie from the final battle scene. Now, as far as look, it's pretty decent. Overall paint scheme is okay with a dry brush silver. It might almost be a little much, but it's still decent. And the front of the rifle is fully exposed without any forward guard, which is understandable given that the grenade launcher has to be connected to the underside. It's still a little awkward, and you can even see that if you watch the movie when Rambo's actually firing it, he has to hold the grenade launcher and the trigger a little awkwardly. But it's a pretty decent recreation. And I will say the grenade launcher doesn't have any moving parts. On the other hand, the rifle does have a functional safety, so you can actually shift it up and down, which is a nice touch, and you can actually rack back the action as well. So overall, nice, just that I think the paint apps could be a little bit better. Next piece is one of Rambo's traditional weapons, which is the compound bow. Now this one's a little different from what we see in Rambo 2, as it includes an external cradle for the arrows, but overall, great sculpt on the bow and nice profiling on it, including the textured grip. Only complaint, the strings seem a little on the frail side, so just have to be cautious when posing him. You also do get a set of 5 arrows as well, 3 with the explosive tips and 2 with just the conventional tip, and the explosive tips look amazing, and they're very much the distinctive ones that Rambo uses in the movies. And finally, you get the pack, which he uses to carry the disassembled bow, and it looks great, and while I think it's pleather, it feels like a thicker, more durable material, so we'll just have to see. Continuing on with the weapons, you also get the grenade launcher with the RPG itself, and look, this actually looks fantastic. Paint app on the launcher is great with the faux wood grain along the body and the metallic paint apps on the handles, especially around the trigger. I think Threezero did a great job here, and the sights are actually functional and can be flipped up in place. So lots of really nice detail work along the entire length of the weapon, and fully assembled, it's distinctive, and I think everybody knows what this is supposed to be, and it just looks great. Final set of weapons for Rambo are actually his knives. Now I will say I think this is my least favorite version of his main knife from all the movies. My absolute favorite was the one from Rambo 2 that also looked like a carbon fiber blade. Big knife here still looks intimidating with a nice smooth cutting edge. It's just insanely big, and I think the knives get bigger for him as the movies go. For this one, I like the wood grain on the handle and the slightly skewed guard, and then you get a smaller knife that we see him use during the initial attempts to rescue Troutman. Interestingly enough, both of these actually didn't come in the trays, but were already pre-installed on the figure. And final set of accessories include the satchel that he uses to carry the set of explosive charges. And first of all, it's a nice fabric with actual metal clips, so there's no fear here that this thing is going to fall apart on you. And it also looks dirty, which works well with the rest of the figure. Then you get the super small necklace he wears, which I think is supposed to be the Buddha that Kobao gives him in the second film, although it does look a little different. But still, I tried to zoom in because there is some good detail on it worth noting. I'm not sure if it's coming through though in the video. And finally, you do get one of the charges he uses, and it's sculpted well, and the digital readout is done nicely with a nice red, and there is a timer kind of ghosted in. So really nice range of accessories. And final pieces included are the additional articles of clothing that let you recreate a bunch of different looks. So you get the tank top and the shirt, and both of them are grungy and super dirty, and they feel like they've been in the desert. Now the shirt is something we see him use early on in the movie until he reaches the encampment where he has that game with the goat, and then he loses it and wears the tank top for a good portion of the movie after. You don't have to faithfully recreate everything you saw in the movie, but there are a lot of great options here, and Threezero did a great job here with these, especially with the weathering. So now let's move on to Sculpt, and I'm just gonna say it, Threezero absolutely killed it. I mean, to me this looks amazing, and I really look at this and I still can't believe I passed on the figure when it launched. I mean, to me the likeness to Stallone is there, and the detail work and paint apps are incredible, down to the facial hair, and the eyes are actually really well done, and even the hair, right? I think this is the longest hair that Rambo ever has in any of the movies, and Threezero did a nice job capturing that. And there is actually some nice detail here, including the pre-installed headband. Honestly, when I see this, it's hard for me to think that this is the same Threezero that did those older X-Files figures. Because I passed on those just because I didn't think they looked good. This has to be some of their best work. And I'm glad to see Threezero doing this, not just with this line, but with the Stranger Things figures and their Walking Dead line. Now, as far as the rest of the figure, first of all, the body selection here is really good. Arms are covered with a rubber sleeve, but it matches the rest of the figure's body. And I like that Threezero even recreated the scars on Rambo. Pants are just standard black cargo pants that are just as dirty as the other clothing pieces we looked at. And the boots are molded, and they're pretty unique looking, right, with some straps on the top of them, which is where he holds one of the knives. I do like that Threezero pre-installed the main sheath for his main knife, since it avoids just tediousness trying to get it to look right. But again, really no complaints with the rest of the figure. So look, overall thoughts on this piece, he's awesome. I have the version from First Blood again, like I said, which is a great piece, but I think this one is my favorite of the 2 releases so far. I'm waiting to see how Rambo 2 turns out, because I have him on order, like I said. I'm just curious to see if he'll top this one, because this is just really a phenomenal figure. And one thing that I will say about Threezero, looking at these two versions and looking at the promo shots for Rambo 2, I love that they actually did unique sculpts for all of them, because I think it's really appropriate for the different versions of Stallone we got in all three movies. So again, really blown away. There are definitely some nitpicks, like I said earlier. The hands, especially the fists, do feel like they're a tad oversized, but something I do want to point out, the wrist pegs and hand swapping. I tend to always have issues with that, and sure, I manage, but these swaps were some of the easiest I dealt with, so really makes posing and changing up the figure much less frustrating. As far as posability, the muscle body does restrict movement a little bit, but if you look at the poses, you can still attain some nice looking ones, and that's an absolute plus. Only additional nitpick would be the ankles. The boots are solid single pieces, so trying to get him to stand in a slightly dynamic stride is challenging. Would have really benefited from split cut pieces, but honestly none of these are deal breakers, and I don't really have any other complaints. Question is always, how am I going to display him in the long run? Because I'll be honest, even the jacket looks incredible with the weathering and dirt. I think every version here just looks great, so that's a good problem to have with a 6-scale figure. So really looking forward to the next Rambo release, and as a big fan of the character, I really hope Threezero surprises us and does more with the license, because they really are impressive. So that was a quick look at John Rambo by Threezero from Rambo 3. Amazing figure, and I have to say it again, thanks to my friend Fabs for sending this to me, because I really thought I missed out. Let me know your thoughts on this figure and the license overall, and as always, thanks for watching, and if you are enjoying the content, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing, and we'll touch base on the next video.